let's thrift a dress into a two-piece set. So welcome, I do sewing and DIY related content, and today we are going to be taking this dress that is originally from Uniqlo and turning it into a two-piece set. As you can see, I already went through and actually cut this into two pieces. I did this as a YouTube short and I realized I didn't get any horizontal footage of cutting it up, so I'll show you that short in a second. But basically I want to turn this into two pieces, so I'll have like a fun little crop top as well as a skirt with maybe some box pleats. But this is what the dress originally looked like. It was a size large from Uniqlo, and when I put it on, as you can see, it fits really nicely, but I really think it'll be fun turning it into two different pieces. So I have it on my dress form here. I was kind of playing around with how I wanted the pleats to go, and then on the sides, the skirt part does actually have pockets. So this was a dress that had pockets, and I want to be sure to incorporate that into the final design, as I always love having pockets. The top is actually really finished nicely, and I do not really want to change anything with that as far as the armholes and the neck hole goes. So really it's just for the top portion going to be hemming the bottom, and then the skirt will be a little bit more detailed and involved, as I want to add a zipper as well as figure out how I want to do a waistband, and there may be some lining included too. But the first step is to focus on the top. So when I took the top off with the dress form, you can see how they finished it was that they did like a serger and then just like pressed that seam under and took a stitch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this up right now. As you can see, it's a little messy. And then I'm just going to go through with my serger and do kind of a very similar method that they did. I may only fold it over once I get it serged though, so it's not going to have as much of a rolled hem. First though, I went through with my scissors and just trimmed this up so I got a lot of that extra fabric off, and then I used my serger to really do the rest of the cleaning. Once it was serged, this is what it looked like. It had a really nice and clean finish. So now what it was time to do was just fold this over. I did about a 1/2 inch hem all the way around. I could have folded this over once more, but since it was already serged and I felt like the neatness was there, I didn't really feel like doing the extra effort of folding it over again. Also, I did want to keep this kind of at the length of your waist. I didn't want it to be too much of a crop. So I just went all the way around, pinned everything up so that I had the hem nice and even and it would be ready to go. Once it was like this, I just took a straight seam all the way around. Now the color thread they were using, it was almost like this very light pinkish purple, and I had a light pink and I was really trying to keep it as similar to what they had as possible. I didn't have that exact purpley tint, but I used this light pink and I think it worked really, really well. Like, it's incredibly similar. This is what the seam ended up looking like, and it came out really nicely. It was super easy, and technically at this point the top is complete as I'm not doing anything else with it. So now what it's time to focus on is the skirt. And the first step I wanted to do was make sure I had all my supplies, so I had to figure out which color zipper to use. And at first I thought I was really going to go for that green color, but I thought that the tan looked better with it. And as you'll see, I really tried to make sure that it was, even though it's not an invisible zipper, you couldn't necessarily see the zipper. So first what I had to do was clean up this edge. You can see it's a little messy itself because of just doing that straight cut to divide into two separate pieces. So I am going to go through, trim this up a little bit more so that I can begin actually doing a nice clean hem on this. And then once I have that all nice and clean, so you can see here it's nice and cut up, I did go ahead and deconstruct one side of the skirt so that I could get still to the pocket, so you can see it here, but I would be able to have some place I could put the zipper into. And I wanted to be sure that I used a lot of what was already here, so it was nice there. I had the pocket, everything's been folded over, as I won't have to necessarily worry as much about the raw edges. So first step I'm going to do is actually go around and do a rolled hem on the top, just so that I can have everything be nice and clean. And then once I do that, I will probably go ahead and start the process of adding the zipper. First though, as you can see, I did that nice rolled hem. It's really small, probably about like 1/4 inch, and I'm just going to take a straight stitch all the way around the top portion of the skirt. So here is what my hem looks like. It turned out really well, and with that complete, it is now time to start focusing on the zipper. So I have my zipper here. I went with like a 9-inch zipper is what I ended up using, and I'm just going to pin it with right sides together with that folded part. So, and what I mean by that is you'll see that the way that they did their skirt, since this was originally a dress, was that they had folded over both of those pieces of the side so that it would also cover up part of that pocket so that there'd be no raw edges. So I'm going to use that to my advantage. You can see I can still get into the pocket here, which is exactly what I wanted, and I'm just using that nice folded over portion of the pocket to sew as close as I can so I can make sure that I am using that nice folded over piece that they had, and that the zipper will be as close to being as invisible as possible since I don't actually have an invisible zipper. Once I basted it in place to see if I liked how it would look, I did the other side. So you can see here the zipper actually does kind of blend in with the fabric. I then tested this out to see did the zipper work, was everything good, and so far it was looking like that's exactly where I wanted my zipper, so then I just took the full seam of it. I do go ahead though and I base zippers first and then I sew them. So I apologize for this video being slightly blurry. It will get clear right after this clip, but as you can see, this skirt was very, very large and I had a lot of extra material, and what I'm going to do with that is actually use that to help me with the box pleats. So I measured out how much extra material I had so that I could figure out how large a box pleats to make. So overall I had 24 inches is how long this was for like the width, and then 14 inches is the waist for one side. So in total, like my waist would be 28 inches. So basically I had 10 inches of extra material that I would be able to use. So you can see I wrote 14 inches for the waist front and then 14 inches for the waist back. And then this gave us a total of 28 inches for my waist. And then I realized that in total I wanted to have 2 box pleats on the front and then 2 box pleats on the back, which would make it be around like 5 inches of materials being used up by these box pleats. So that would give us an extra 20 inches of material that we are getting rid of for the sizing, which is what we are looking for. So this is how I ended up doing to get a rough idea of how large to make my box pleats. And then I was going to try it on and see, you know, like, does this work? Am I happy with this width, or do I want to make it larger or smaller? So in total, the box pleats, so there was 2.5 inches behind it, and then each of those pleats ended up being like 1.25 inches, how much I was folding to get that 5 inches of material. So I did that for both the 2 front pleats as well as the 2 pleats on the back, and then I just spaced out how much material I wanted between them, and I believe it came to around like 4 inches for both the front and the back, so that the pocket acted as a divider on either side. I found this worked really well, and even though there was some math involved, as you can see, it allowed me a really great starting point so I could figure out how big of a box pleat to make. So once I went through and figured out how many box pleats, the size of them, I did try this on to see what it would look like on and if I enjoyed the fit, and it was good. This was where I wanted it. It had a little extra room on the sides, which is what I was hoping, because most likely I'll be trying to tuck something into this. You can see that both of the pockets are still usable, and then the overall idea is I'm actually going to be sewing some of the box pleat down. I'm thinking about sewing it around like 3 to 4 inches just straight down on either side to hold it in, and then I will be folding and pressing this so that it shows up even more. And then this is what the back looked like. Again, it's going to be very, very similar to the front of having those 2 box pleats. I'll be sewing it down and then pressing it so that you can really see the nice smooth and crisp effect of the pleats. So now it was time to actually sew these pleats in. For the first step, I just sewed directly across, as I will be folding all of that fabric over that's at the top where I did the original hem, so you're not going to be able to see it, but I just took a straight stitch all the way across to initially hold in the pleats. Once I did this stitch, it was then time to begin actually focusing on the pleat itself, so making sure that I could get it to be nice and flat, and by doing this, it would allow me then to take that nice and straight seam to hold the pleat even more so in place to make the skirt not look so big, especially like around the hips and near the top. So to do this, first I trimmed off all those little extra threads so that they would get out of the way. And then as you can see here, everything's looking pretty good so far, and now it was time to actually begin pinning this so that I would be able to take the seams on all the pleats to hold them down. And then just as an extra step to make sure that the pleat was staying in place, I did iron all this and kind of press it out nicely so that I didn't have to worry about the pleat moving, or if somehow one of the pins came out, there would still be that nice crease that I could use sort of as a guide. So you can see here that I did it for this pleat. I just pressed it and then I went through and pinned it all up so that it'd be much easier for me to go through and take that final seam. And I did this for all 4 pleats, and as you can see, it ended up being around 5 inches is the full length that I'm going to be sewing down. So I'm going to be doing this on both sides of the pleat and just taking a nice straight stitch. So this is what the pleat ended up looking like. It looked so nice, it looked so crisp, and it really just gave it that little extra amount of detail that I think will work really, really well with the skirt. So what I ended up doing was then I pressed out the rest of the pleat. So even though I'm not sewing it all the way down, I did use my iron to just press this out so that it would really have that nice crisp effect and really emphasize the pleat more. Now it was time to add a lining though, as when I looked inside the skirt, it was a little messy from the zipper. Also, I didn't really want the zipper to be rubbing against my skin as it wasn't the most comfortable. So I had some leftover lining from a previous project. This is actually from the handkerchief skirt I made, and I'm just going to measure it out so that I'm able to use it on the inside of the skirt. So I laid it out as much as I could. As you can see, it definitely is not long enough, which is fine since the lining should be shorter anyways, but I was able to get the two pieces, which in theory, I probably could have just done one continuous piece and then just have those two edges, but the way, as you can see, it's cut out, the fabric was really trying to piece it together to work. But this was all a thrift flip project, so I wanted to try to reuse as many pieces as I could. So I pinned up the one side and then I trimmed up what would be the bottom of the lining. I'm just going to use my serger to take both of those seams so that it would be nice and neat and I wouldn't really have to worry about doing a hem. So this is what my lining now looks like. You can see that the bottom portion is clean and then that one seam on the side is also taken. And now it's time to add this to the skirt itself. So here is my lining. I have the right side facing out so that the right side is basically what is going to be touching like your legs or your skin, and then the wrong sides of the skirt are together. And then I have this measured, and what I'm going to be doing is folding this over once at the top. So I just folded this over once. I guess if you really wanted to, you could fold it over again, but this is what the outside of my fabric looks like. And then at the bottom, you can see they did a double needle hem, and I really like that touch. I thought it'd be fun to kind of incorporate that at the top as well. So I will be trying to do some sort of maybe like 2 rows of stitches to kind of replicate the hem. And then as you can see here, I have now my lining pinned into my skirt, and it's now time to take that seam. So I did 1 row at the bottom, and then I just very, very carefully top stitched all the way around so that it has that fun double needle effect. I definitely could have used a double needle here, but I decided against it. Now what it was time to do was to attach the lining to where the zipper portion was, and I ended up hand sewing this so that it made it a lot neater looking, as I wasn't quite sure how the sewing machine would work with it, and I wanted to be sure that you didn't see the seam on the outside. So I just very carefully went through and did a very light whip stitch to hold the lining in place with the zipper. And this is what it ended up looking like. It looks very clean, very neat, and you don't really have to worry about any of the raw edges from the zipper. This was the final look, so here is the skirt as well as the top. This was so fun to make, and I really love how it turned out. There's no raw edges anywhere. Everything came together really, really well, and now I think it's time to try to put it together into a final look. If you enjoyed this video, if you like this thrift flip, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and tell me what you want to see next. Thanks for watching.